Hello world, Great Giza Pyramid. What I'm going to suggest to you today is a Halliburton-sized project, but if you pay attention, all the pieces are here. First off, we take a river. In this case, we knew the Nile River ran north to the Mediterranean and south from the African plains. So we take this north running river and we put our three structures. See, where were they? They were about here. It's actually too spacious, but I'm give me some artistic license in here. This one runs straight, this one runs this way, this one runs that way. The Sphinxy guy is right here. So we take this and we take a offshoot of it and we bring it around the back of the mountain line here. And by the way, this whole plane goes south. This particular structure is approximately 40 feet in elevation, the base of it from there. So this whole plane is running down. This offshoot here, we can get the measurements of the area on the other side where they find the docks and ports and stuff, and they show signs of a hustle and bustle over there. This is where the for whatever reason commerce would come in through here, and you would have a much tamer place to park your boats than the running river. Now, the average river is said to drop on average 8 feet per mile. So being that this to here is approximately 2+ miles, let's say we have about 16 feet of play to work with. This will be about 16 feet in elevation above the river at that approximate level, because this is pulled from here and doesn't run down. It just fills and maintains. Now, it may even be further. If it's a possibility, we can find evidence of a waterfall or something like that. Or it may even be better if we follow the terrain, and it may have actually even come up further, so there may be a bigger drop. But either way, we got a couple of feet of play to work with. Now, when we look at the structure from the elevation of what's happening, you have the inlet. Let's just put it here, and we'll call that 0 for now. That's where the boats are docked. Okay, you got your little boats over here, and they were probably sailboats at the time. That probably weren't motorboats. They come through under the mountain ridge, whatever the shape of it is, through what they like to call the lost caves of Giza, and these are located basically through there. Actually, they start around here where they have the things they like to call the mastabas. They got some there, and they've got some over here, and we'll get to them shortly. But let's work with these. This comes through what they call the Lost Caves of Giza. There's documentaries where a couple of people went down in there. They had to wear special gear because there's lots of bats in there. They've declared it off limits because it's a bat sanctuary. But either way, at the time, they were an aquifer. Now they're caves, since this whole area is now dry. So they go through the Lost Caves of Giza. And then they will come out over here where that area is, where all the mastabas are. And the mastabas will basically take up volume to allow this water to go to the elevation without needing the volume of water you would need to fill that. Why? Not sure. Don't care. Follow the system. Maybe things will answer itself, or people who understand hydraulics better will get that. It then channels actually to the second structure, where it drips into that pool. It will come out one of the large square openings, say more rectangular because they're not always square, rectangular to the east of the structure, west. Man, I'm blowing this. It would be to the west of the structure. This side. They've got this one side is kind of like a very sheer cliff wall. It's going to come out of there and drip into the pool. This will have the waters separated from the other waters, because it's a quarantine system. This whole area is a quarantine system in a lime bath. Right? This is, like I said, it's a Halliburton-sized project. The water comes into there, drips into there, down a waterfall. It does not connect, and saturates that. Now that's the only one that is filled. From here, there's a conduit, and I believe it's on the outside of the structure, somewhere on the plateau, which goes to in front of, when I say front, this is north, and this is the area where there's a hole in the ground that has the split there, and then a hole here, and this is a wall, and this is a wall, so it's a T shape there going down, and then an opening here. This is going to be where all the waters of the three structures come together, and you're going to be playing with eventually the density of the water to filter out. Now this is actually at a lower plane. This will be underground, but when the pools are filled, this is the area where you're playing a teeter-totter game with the waters. Like if you had a beaker over here filling, going down across, and a beaker over here filling, and you decide to put mercury in this one and just water in here, the mercury will run down and be heavier, so it'll push the water up and maybe fill it to here. But if you put enough water, you can eventually get the water to be dense enough to run down and out. Actually, I don't even know if it would run out. Well, in this situation, it actually comes up and spills into the other one without spilling into this one. So it's separation. It's if you look at what a phase separator does, it's kind of like that. Look at oil and vinegar. You want the oil would be on top, the vinegar to come up and then spill off and into the other channel. That's a runoff, with leaving the oil on the top maintaining. But either way, that whole dance occurs here. And then the field that's out here with more mastabas, you notice those ones have more space between them. For whatever reason, there's a larger volume of water in here. Now, I believe that larger volume helps the density, which maintains the water levels within the structures. With the you're playing this game. There's actually 3 pools involved, and it would allow one of them, as it fills, to have a runoff without polluting or getting into the other one. And we'll get more into that because it's actually pretty beautiful. So that fills the structures, and then there is runoff that comes out of here down to that area. That may be actually a product, the way it is set up, but we can get into that. And then there is and that actually is a runoff that's very important, because approximately here within that structure is where they have the area they like to call the Osiris shaft, and that is the only spot on the plateau that it actually goes down to the water table. That would be here, where it goes down to the natural water table, and that will be the ground for the system, and that's located here. And like I said, this is a quarantine system. That's going to be your controlled ground. And this actually works with, there's about 40-30 feet underground, there's a shaft that runs straight towards there. That will be playing with the waters here as they're running down at that elevation, which is a lower elevation because it is running downhill. I lost my maps. We'll get back to that later. Since it is running downhill, then the water level of the river itself, we'll put the natural water level of the river here, and just know that it'll come from the higher elevation to the lower elevation. And that's the delta we're playing with. The water pressure from here, which is the natural water pressure of nature, against the artificial water pressure that we have manufactured by having that water at a higher elevation. It'll come through, fill that one channel, and fill the other 2 pools. Now when it fills the other two pools, like I said, they all short in front of the Great Giza Pyramid. So let me go ahead and, so this is the mastabas. We'll fill the second structure, its pool, only it will be a tiny bit lower because it spills into it. Now, for the sake of argument and to give us room to play with, let's say it's just a foot lower. I think it's actually a little bit more than that because I do think the drop is actually greater than that. But let's just say it's a foot lower. This will fill that pool, and in the process of filling that pool, we'll go through the area where it shorts to the other pool, and it's going to fill them all to the same level because that's what nature does. They all get filled to the same level. Over time, what's going to occur is in this structure, we've discussed several times, you're taking the water that's within the structure and you're cracking it into its two separate gases, venting out the oxygen out of the subterranean chamber, which is where the oxygen is separated from it. It's actually done in the pit, the only spot that it touches natural ground. And then in the subterranean chamber, the only other spot that it touches earth, natural ground, that's where the hydrogen is peeled off the system. Now this is actually at ground level. I already told you the Great Giza Pyramid is actually about 40 feet lower than the third pyramid, what I like to call Building 7. So this is actually occurring under the water table, under our water table we're playing with. So the hydrogen gas is actually brought to the top, where it marries in with the oxygen, which is, nitrogen, oxygen, and carbon dioxide, brought in from air, natural air outside the structure, through the one shaft that leads into the king's chamber, where the hydrogen comes up through the floor, the hole in the floor in the back, where they've covered it over and put a nice metal plate, but you can see plenty of pictures of what it used to look like. There's a shut-off valve, not a shut-off, a backflash arrestor, where it has to bubble into one area and then bubble out into the room so that the reaction, the fire in the middle that is occurring within this, is a controlled burn. The water level, when you burn hydrogen and the oxygen together, is going to be, if you notice, we're going to do a quick sketch of the king's chamber. It feels like this pen is running out. How the entrance into the king's chamber from that shaft comes in, shaped just like that, comes out into the room, like so. It's in a kind of cutout in the wall. This is where, when the water level raises, when the reaction is occurring, the water level will cut off the oxygen coming in from the outside world. And when it lowers, it'll allow more oxygen into the room, which will get the reaction, up and running. So it is a controlled burn. It is not just a random explosion. Now, I do believe, as they said, that they found evidence of explosions in the king chamber, just like when your furnace or your heater kicks on. There is an initially, or your oven, when the gas kicks on, there's initially a explosion when the gases mix and the fire starts, whether it's a spark or a match. In this case, I believe it's a spark. But when that occurs, there will be an explosion, and hence the evidence that they find agrees with this. The other side of the structure, king's chamber, you have the other shaft that goes into the wall. This is going to be your water level, your mean water level, and it's actually intended to allow the waters to seep into here, but not the gases between these two areas where it goes up into the wall to mix. This is your king's chamber area. This and you've got the cutouts there, which will allow condensation in that area and dripping, and that's where we're going to get into the heavy water and what's occurring. You also notice along the back edge, if you look at it, there's a little channel cut out over there. It's actually kind of more like that. That will allow that condensated heavy water to drip back into the system and maintain on this side of the reaction. That's actually something they're looking for. This here is where it vents up into the system. We're going to get condensation, and it's going to be running down, falling through that channel that goes into the what they like to call the antechamber, pre-chamber, before, whatever, into there. And we're not going to get into everything in here. It's kind of complicated, but for the main part, that condensated water will fall down the system, run down, go through the little funnel that used to be on the top of the grand step, as they wish to call it, until they patched it over so Granny didn't take a slide down there. That falls into the center channel. Here, this is one of your goals you're looking for, this particular condensated liquid. Exactly what it is, that's not sure. Exactly the properties of it, that's what we, can play the numbers and worry about that later. But however it is, this liquid comes down, falls down, runs down the center channel into the area that they like to call the Queen's Chamber. Now you look at the Queen's Chamber, this is where we're having fun. We have now brought abnaturally, not naturally, but abnaturally, the Queen's Chamber is actually at a lower elevation. That hallway is at a lower elevation than the waters on the outside. We have manufactured the water table at a lower elevation than it is outside the structure. And from here, this gas is pulled off. Initially, there was a tiny hole, like enough for like a 30 gauge wire or something to go through, which is what led them to drill the hole in the southern wall and then open it up, and then they found the hole in the northern wall. But either way, that would either peel out a gas or a liquid. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter to me. But it didn't do it at a high volume, because I believe the reaction within here is quite violent, and by having a small hole, it would allow it to bleed out without really affecting the overall reaction and pressures in here. But that is then piped into the third structure. This is really where you're getting this quarantined area, and this, you notice, the elevations are such that it comes into the primary room here. There's a bleed off that goes out to the outside of the structure, and that's actually on the northern side of the structure. And then there's a area, if we're looking down upon the structure, with this being north. Actually, I should go back to the other map real quick just to make things that's north. So it is actually this side of the structure where it looks like a bunch of a warehousing area. We'll just call it a warehousing area. There is one hole in the wall, I believe that would be the west wall, that, yes, because this is east wall. Man, I'm off on that one. The east wall that has a conduit. It has a nice square cutout in it. You can look, pictures are there, not lying. That would be just below the water table of the outside, which would make it such that this, whatever it is quarantined in here, at an artificial water table level, can't escape out, because it actually has to go up to an elevation that is higher than, if you notice, there's a conduit that comes down into the structure from the outside here, that goes down to an area that pressure keeps this gas from coming at a higher elevation than either the water table on the outside or, I believe, the gases itself. The way to pull it out is by adding a negative pressure suction, which will pull it up and out kind of like a straw, or siphoning out something. So this right here, what's isolated in this structure, is a product, and I believe there's another product because of the way it's designed to pull things out of the second structure, the one that has the smoother area on top and the ground plane before it gets rough and then rougher. That, I believe, is another product, and again, it's held in the same way by having the natural water table, which is actually artificial because we brought it down, dripped it down. So it's the natural water table is actually a little bit lower, but not as low as the true water table, because the river has run downhill. So the true water table is actually lower, and that actually shorts to the Osiris's shaft, which is at, even goes down lower. It's even a lower water table. But the area where that connects is at a higher elevation than here. And one of my suggestions when you look into deuterium and heavy water is it has a feature called creep. And what it does is it's looking to evaporate into the water and then condensate at a lower elevation. So it's like if you had a, well, just look at it like that. The same way water itself evaporates into the air and then condensates in a puddle or a lake or a pool at a lower elevation. It's what nature is doing. The heavy water evaporates into the light water, and you're trapping it within this system so that the heavy water, which is, I believe, actually being condensated within here and artificially burnt and manufactured within here. So you're attacking it from both ends, letting nature help you, and a brute force attack the same way we do things today. And this, both of them are designed so that the heavy water in here, or the gas that's subjected from it, is pulled into here, and then the heavy water itself is quarantined within here. You notice how you have an area that comes up, down, up, and that's at a lower elevation. This is where the heavy water comes in and goes out one of those conduits, and I don't know where it goes to. It may either go outside the structure, which is a possibility, to the area over here, where on this structure it looks like they're doing something to the north. Yeah, so this is over here to the I'd actually rather look at a satellite picture. But yeah, I do believe it's on that side, where it looks like there's some warehousing. Here it's to the side of it, where this is your entrance, this is your entrance here, and this is your entrance here. So this is working like a phase separator, where they separate mush from water, from oils and slicks. This is doing a like thing where you're squeezing your heavy water into this structure, where its ground goes down deep, but not as deep as the shaft. It is the water is teased with a no goal here, because of the way I said the waters running here are actually running. These waters are running. So the elevation, the pressure of this is actually midway. The heavy waters within the system can't really escape here because it's at a higher elevation than its functioning level, but at a lower elevation than the water table on the outside. So your heavy water is tricked into actually going to the third structure, where it has a ground which goes low, but not as low as here, but it can't get here. This water is running down, so it can't really fight its way up, and it would have to go all the way through the system. Electricity likes to take a path of least resistance. One of the other things about the structures, you look at, there's constant patterning throughout the entire structure, showing you strengths. If you had a circuit and you had a break, however you want to put it, and then you add enough electricity, you're going to get an arc, you know what I mean, like a little lightning bolt. Well, you could make this out. That's kind of like how they did the arc lighting of the days of past, to have these arcs going and going and going, and at the end, if you put a slightly bigger arc, it can't quite break that until it reaches a certain level. Well, this is the same thing. You're allowing it to jump from A to B to C, and it knows it can kind of get to the next one, but it can't, and it's quarantined within the structure. Now, I just jumped into the energy bit. I didn't really mention that too much, but if we look at the structures, the primary structure has a thing on top that's, 39 feet by 39 feet. That's the area on the top of there. There is no way there was a pyramidion or anything up there. That would be the pyramid in the size of a dump truck. Now the second structure, it's only 9 feet by 9 feet. It conceivably could have had a top, but that doesn't really matter how much because it worked fine just the way it is. This slick top here and this rough top here, the way it's designed, if you look at, I have a URL you can hit, surface.giza.ws. If that doesn't work, surface.greatgizapyramid.com. And you can see how this structure, the larger structure, has tiny steps, and then they work their way bigger and bigger. It's kind of like little waves. That pen is useless now. They work out little waves with a larger step being down at what they like to call the 39th level. And then it has steps that are about half of that, but evenly paced until it gets pretty much down to just below the spillway where the water comes into the system, spills in from the moat on the outside of this structure, which doesn't even have to be around the entire structure. It only has to be a pool around the front of it. It's just fighting back water. It may have been around the entire structure, but it only has to be around that area to hold the pressure you're looking at. And we may find that a larger volume may add more pressure, or it definitely would add more pressure, but I think there's a point of return where it doesn't matter. That's for somebody else to figure out. Either way, the water would be up there. The natural water would be just below the 39th ring around the Great Giza Pyramid, and the manufactured water table is going to be above the area where it spills in. In fact, it's kind of more like where there's the ridge, the tube to the side of the entrance. That's going to be just below your water line, or probably a few feet below it. So we'll put the water line about there. And this, we could take and compare them. I haven't seen anything with elevations of the structure, just where they are on a north to south pattern. Looking for the elevations, because that would confirm all of this and really set it up, and we can turn it on and see what it plays. But either way, what I was getting to with this is the whole reason for this is a resistor where the ambient brush discharge electricity, static electricity, would be quarantined to the surface of the structure, but it would be quarantined to the top, like 4/5 of the structure. And the way it's designed to sweep, it actually works its way up to kind of like the top 40th percent, or 30 to 40 top percent of the structure, approximately where the fins are, whatever you want to call them, conduits that come into the structure on the north and south side that feed into the Great Giza Pyramids, what they call the King's Chamber, which I like to call the combustion room, where I believe there's going to be a spark. You take a look at the face of where that conduit comes into the room, how it's kind of shaped like that, and how the point there protrudes out past the wall line just a little bit, but then it comes back into the room inside that. It's more like a rectangle, but it's practically a square. You got nice channels that come through there. If you look, nice clean corners on the wall. That is going to act with the static electricity, which is quarantined to the top of the structure. Just over time, over nature, it's going to get into that King's Chamber, which is so smooth